Welcome to our Behind the Mic with MAB podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Fontaine. Join me as I chat with vibrant radio hosts, intriguing television personalities, and the brilliant minds behind TV and radio stations in our broadcast community. Today, I am thrilled to be sitting down with a true Mississippi legend, the Walt Grayson. Walt has spent his entire career telling the stories of the people, places, and history of the Magnolia State. Born and raised in Greenville, I'm a Delta girl too, Walt.
How are you? Okay.
Walt fell in love with broadcasting as a high school student working at a local radio station. That passion eventually led him to Jackson, where his voice and presence became a staple across both radio and television. Walt recalls his early days at WSLI radio, then making the jump to WLBT in 1984, where he served as weather anchor, chief meteorologist, and feature reporter over more than 3 decades. His storytelling gifts eventually carried him back to WJTV, where he now works as a full-time lifestyle and feature reporter, bringing viewers into the heart of Mississippi one segment at a time. In addition to his television work, Walt has written 4 books focused on Mississippi travel and history, contributes a monthly column to the Electric Co-ops of Mississippi publication, and is the longtime host and segment producer for Mississippi Public Broadcasting's beloved Mississippi Roads. His accomplishments include induction into the Mississippi Broadcasters Hall of Fame and the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Gold Circle, and many, many other accolades as well. Walt is going to share how he balances life, family, faith, and curiosity, and reflects on what keeps him energized in a career that has spanned decades. Married to his junior high school sweetheart, Ms. Jo, Walt is a proud father, grandfather, and great-grandfather who continues to explore every corner of the state in search of the next great story. It will be a warm, inspiring conversation with a man who has helped Mississippi see itself more clearly for over 50 years.
Wow.
So excited to have you today, Walt.
That sounds
You're amazing.
That sounds great. I can't wait to hear me. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I was just thinking about it the other day. Yeah, it scared me when I got to thinking about how long I've been, well, not only how long I've been in radio, but in television, but how long I've been in Jackson. I was thinking, I don't even claim to be that old, much less having been in Jackson that long. And then I was in Greenville before that. You mentioned Greenville, and I've had an interest in broadcasting really all of my life. I think probably it started out because we were in a fringe television area in Greenville. There were no stations anywhere around us when television came out, and I'm that old. So I can actually remember maybe once or twice specifically, but I remember a time or two sitting around the living room at night with the family listening to the radio, which meant nothing to me because, I was just a kid. But I got that radio when the family bought a television and took it back in my room and tinkered with it and toyed with it. And by the time I was 10 years old, I'd completely taken it apart just to see what all was in there. And to my own credit, I put it back together at one time, too, and it actually worked before I ended up having to throw it all away. But my interest in radio came from playing around with that old family radio, because not only could you tune up and down the AM dial at night and pick up stations all over the country and the Spanish stations from Mexico, but you get on the shortwave band, and at that time, nations had shortwave broadcasts because that's the way you got your message out to the world. There were no satellites and things like that. So Here in little old Greenville, Mississippi, I could pick up Radio Moscow, Radio Havana, the Vatican, um, and that to me fascinated me that somebody could be that far away and I could hear them talking in my bedroom. From that, I don't know. I also got interested in music. Elvis came out about that time, um, and rock and roll radio, which thank goodness rock and roll radio came out, or radio would have died a horrible death way back then. Because television came along and people turned off the radios, gave them to the kids, threw them away, and started watching television. But so radio was saved by rock and roll. I like rock and roll. I like the idea of, I knew I wasn't going to ever be a rock and roll band member. I'm not that musically inclined. But like a lot of other people who are frustrated band members, you could be a disc jockey. And also, I thought that it would be a good way to get chicks to be a disc jockey.
It obviously worked for you.
Well, I don't know, 55, 60 years later, we'll see. So, no, it was fun. It was just the fact, I think back now, and I honestly don't know what was so fascinating about it. Maybe just childhood imagination and just the ability to think where all my voice could be going, or who could be listening, or I don't know. But I've enjoyed it, and now that I'm not qualified to do anything else, so I guess I'll stick with it.
So I think that's so interesting. So you started out, because I always ask people, okay, how did you get into the broadcast industry? So you started out tinkering with the radio,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ended up working at a radio station in Greenville.
Yeah.
What did you do, and who did you work for?
Well, let me tell you how I got that job. My father had a job where he worked out on the road every day, and he had a service station where he bought his gasoline that gave him a 3 cent a gallon discount if he had to sign a ticket. I started driving to school during high school when I got my driver's license when I was 15 years old. So, sure, I went to Daddy's service station, filled up the car, signed a ticket. And then summer came, and Daddy gave me a stack of tickets that I had signed and said, "You owe the service station $100.
Uh-oh.
And man, I had a paper route at that time. That's my only paying job. So I went to work for the service station to pay off my gasoline debt. Well, they got this load of tires in that they wanted to sell. They wanted to do a radio commercial to advertise the tires. So I went with them down to the radio station to do that commercial. I just wanted to see because I was curious about radio, love radio. While I was at the radio station, found out they had an opening for the Sunday morning position. And I don't even think it was a requirement to speak English. It was just if you could get up in the morning, get down there, sign the station on, push all the buttons, that's all you needed. But I got that Sunday morning job at WJPR in Greenville. And that was, so if I had not signed all of those gas tickets, if I had just been an honorable kid and paid for my own gasoline, I don't know what I'd be doing for a living today. But since I had to pay off my debt, I got my first job in radio.
What a great story. That's awesome.
And the station, I mentioned the Beatles. The Beatles were out there and all this. And of course, I wanted to play rock and roll. This was a big band station, a lot of Jimmy Dorsey and stuff like that, and, the Dinosaur. But it was radio, and it was on the air. And we had this huge console, this thing, I don't know, about this long, maybe longer. It had knobs all across the bottom and, buttons and meters and things like that. It looked very complicated, which was intimidating until you actually sat down to work it. And you only used about 2 knobs and the mic button and a row of little push buttons on there. One day, the sales manager walked in. I've got to say this, that the Gresham brothers owned this radio station. And they were so gracious to give me a job and let me work there. And I appreciate that. I will always appreciate them. Buddy Gresham, who ended up being a state senator for a long, long time, was our sales director. He walked in the studio one day and he looked at that board and he says, "Walt, that looks complicated." And I said, "No, buddy, there's nothing to it. You just use this and this and this." He threw up his hands. He says, "No, don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me." He says, "Let me tell you something that'll take you far in life. First of all, if you don't know how to do it, they can't make you do it. You show me how that board works, I'll be doing the Sunday afternoon shift. He says, but if I don't know how, they can't make me. The second thing is, if you know how to do it and do it the first time as a favor, it will become a part of your job description. So 2 things that carried me through life. Number one, when I got to WLBT, although there's nothing to running a teleprompter, I never sat down and learned how to run the teleprompter because I wanted to go home at 6 o'clock at night, because usually right before the 6 o'clock news, there was this wild call over the intercom, teleprompter operator to the studio, teleprompter operator to the studio. And our news director, Dennis Smith, Walt, go run teleprompter. And I said, Dennis, I don't know how. And so he'd have to go find somebody else. And I was thinking, thank you, Buddy Gresham. And then the other thing is, though, I did know how to run a television camera. Now, when I went to work, I'd worked years in radio, and we'll talk about that in a minute if you want to, but worked years in radio and then went to WLBT television. But I knew how to run the television camera. I had a story lined up for days or something like that, and they pulled my photographer right as I was going out the door to do this story because they had a wreck on State Street. 2 cars hit each other, and that's big news. And so I lost my photographer for that. So I just started using my own camera as a favor. I never got another photographer after that. So it's true that if you know how to do it, you ever do it as a favor the first time, it'll become your job description. But I always, mostly what I enjoyed about doing my stories, I think, was the photography, because that's my other thing. Photography was always my hobby. Here, you ramble a while. I've rambled enough here for a minute.
Oh, my goodness. I can listen to you all day. So you started out at the Gresham radio station, and then
went to WDDT, which was the big-time rock and roll station in Greenville at that time. And radio was a big deal back then. It's an afterthought now. People ask me about being in radio. I tell them, I've been in radio so long. I started out in AM radio. Not only was it AM radio, it was still black and white. And people, of course, they don't even know what black and white television is, so I guess all that goes over their heads. But anyway, WDDT was a big station because we had people that started out at WDDT or got there and worked for a little while that went from there to St. Louis or Chicago to Dallas. So it was a good, like, minor league radio station. I wanted to go there because it was my hometown radio station. I'd listened to it all my life, and I had fun there. I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I couldn't make a living there because that's long time ago, and they just didn't pay very much. And they're not there anymore anyway, so I guess I can talk about them. But Bob Rawle in Jackson, Mississippi, who at that time was working the Bob and Al show on WSLI, and they had a split. Bob was going out on his own. He became the general manager of WRBC, heard me on the air in Greenville, and hired me to come to Jackson. And so that's how I got my big break in the big city, because Bob Rawle got me down here to work at WRBC, which ended up being a big station also. Many of the people that we were working, that I worked with, my good friends, went to Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Harry Nelson was Happy Harry Nelson was his name when he was in Jackson. Went to Boston, ended up becoming the program director of WRKO radio in Boston. He retired to Maine, and for kicks, he would go to New York City and work weekends on WCBS FM down there just for the heck of it, just to go have fun. There are people who would kill their mothers and grandmothers to go to work at WCBS, and he was so good, he just did it for kicks. Anyway, I worked with some great people. Too bad none of that rubbed off on me, but man, I can say I know them anyway.
It absolutely did rub off on you. So how did you transition from radio to TV? How'd that happen?
I was working at WSLI radio, and at that time, WSLI radio and WJTV television, and the FM too. We had FM, and their WSLI FM. It's all owned by the same company. And the radio station was right across the driveway from the television station. Long story short, they were looking for a weekend weather person. I had also been interested in weather all of my life, too. And this goes back to my father because Daddy worked out on the road every day. And not only did I use him for the 3 cent a gallon discount on my gasoline, but I got my interest in weather from him because when Greenville finally got a cable television system so we could see something up there, uh, our our 3 channels. We got ABC, well, we got NBC from Channel 3 in Jackson, CBS from Channel 12 in Jackson, and then we got ABC, though, because Channel 6 in Greenwood wasn't on the air yet. We got ABC from Little Rock. And the way they did weather back then, let me see if I can remember exactly how. Channel 12 had their weathercasts first. Channel 7 at Little Rock had their weathercast in the middle, and then Channel 3 put their weathercast at the end of the newscast. Daddy wasn't interested that much in news. He was interested in the weather because he was going to be out on the road every day. And so he would watch Channel 12, Channel 7, Channel 3, take those 3 forecasts, add them together, divide by 3, and come up with his own forecast. So I had an interest in weather. At the time that Channel 12 was looking for a weekend weather person, I was thinking, well, I might want to give this a shot. So went over and auditioned for the job. And I think the requirement was, do you faithfully promise to show up every weekend and do this? And so that was my first taste of television, was doing weekend weather on Channel 12. Ended up doing weekend weather and noon weather on Channel 12. And then they sold everything. Capital Broadcasting split up. Channel 12 went one direction, and the 2 radio stations went another direction. My main paycheck came from, at that time, WSLI AM. So the guys that bought the radio station did 2 things. They paired me up with, I can't even, that's so long ago, I can't remember a real name. But they paired us up and put us on the FM in the morning, and they called us Walt and Wendy. And they changed the call letters of the radio station to WYYN, Win. And we had contests all the time. So we were Walt and Wendy on Win 96. But I was still working across the driveway at the television station doing noon weather with Dick Miller. Well, my boss called me into his office one day and said, that I just don't want my disc jockeys doing weather. And I'm thinking, what an idiot. I mean, what perfect promotion for one of your personalities is having him on a television station. But, since he was paying my main paycheck, I decided, okay, I'll do it your way. So I quit doing weather. Stayed with them until, and this is not the highlight of my career, but it kind of goes along with this television station. These guys, they shall remain nameless, and if you know who they are, you're still probably thinking bad thoughts about them. But the guys who owned this television station, they were from Texas. They were going to come over here and show us stupid Mississippians how to do radio. And they had some great ideas, and I thought the radio station sounded great, but they really had some bad personnel issues, how they dealt with their people. Their idea of getting your attention was to come call a staff meeting about every 6 weeks, fire a couple of people to begin with, so everybody else would pay real close attention. And me and Wendy lasted about 1.5 years with them before they fired us. I thought that, well, first of all, I was thinking, well, my first thought was, well, what am I going to do for a living? And then the first job that I heard that was available was Channel 3 was looking for a 10 o'clock weatherman. And I went over and talked to Bert Case. He hired me for the job. And I was thinking, well, I'll just do weather until I find another radio job. That was 1984. I never found another radio job. I fell in love with television. I liked weather, but the other thing that I liked was they put me doing stories. I'd never done a television story in my life. And it wound up in a roundabout way of doing feature stories. What happened was they sent me, back in the good old days when I got a photographer, sent me and a photographer down to Port Gibson to do a story about, I don't even know what was going on that day, but I knew Port Gibson was near the ruins of Windsor. And the reason I knew about the ruins of Windsor was all the way back to WJPR, the first radio station I worked for. It was in an old house on South Broadway in Greenville, which, as an aside, I swear it is haunted. But I had to work every day, so me and the ghost got along together. Oh, listen, I tell you, I'd go in there one more. The wall would knock. And I would think it's squirrels, except squirrels don't have knuckles. And the wall would knock, 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 until one morning I was about to turn on the mic, and I said, "Stop, I've got to go on the air." And it stopped. I was thinking, this is unnatural. Anyway, that's just a kid in a dark house on a early morning. Anyway, in the living room of this radio station, there was this picture of these old columns in ruins, and I was thinking this is some castle in Europe or something. And I asked the boss one day, Mr. Gresham, says, "What is that?" And he says, "Oh, that's ruins of Windsor. It's about 120 miles from here." I had no idea Mississippi had anything like that in it. So way years later, me and the photographer are down in Port Gibson doing this story. And I asked him, "Do you think we have time to go out to the ruins of Windsor?" And he thought so. And I was riding with him. So we rode out to Windsor. I was awestruck by actually seeing it. He got his camera out, took some pictures of the ruins. He took some pictures of the weeds in front of it, the weeds in focus, and the ruins out of focus, and all this other stuff, wide shots and tight shots. Well, we went back that day and aired the story that they sent us to Port Gibson to do. I saved that footage of Windsor and wrote some script to go along with it that I'm sure I thought was just this side of poetry. Whittled it all together and put it on Friday. And from that time, my assignment began to move more toward features and away from Board of Supervisors meetings. And years later, reputation that I had for doing feature stories is why public broadcasting came to me and asked me if I'd like to host Mississippi Roads. So,
What are some of your favorite places you've visited in Mississippi?
oh my goodness. Oh, let me see. I like, I'll be honest with you, I like the Port Gibson battlefield because to me it's romantic in not, a romantic kind of thing. It's romantic in the thought of it, the fact that it's still sitting there really pretty much the way it was, other than it's grown up now, but there's been very little development there since the time that General Grant marched his troops down the road right in front of Schaefer House and or camped out in the cornfields of Windsor. And so you're walking on pretty much the same ground that Civil War soldiers walked on back in the 1860s. Matter of fact, I've told people about the road that goes past Schaefer House, and I'll tell them, this is the exact road that General Sherman's troops walked down. As a matter of fact, I don't think they graveled it since then. And maybe not, because I tell you what, I took a metal detector out there and got in front of the Schaefer House. The first thing I found was a pop top. Second thing I found was a Civil War mini ball laying right out in the middle of the road. But I like the Schaefer House. I like Natchez because Natchez is just so different. If they haven't had a party lately in Natchez, they'll have a party to celebrate that. Not that I'm a big party person. I just like the funness of it. I like the Gulf Coast. I like the resilience of the Gulf Coast. Now, I was here in radio, but I was here when Camille hit. And I had never seen the coast before then. It's about a year after that I went to the coast, and it was still torn up after Camille. And then I saw it rebuild after Camille from, the little fishing villages into this metropolitan area. And now then, after Katrina, my gosh, is turning into this megalopolis between New Orleans and the Gulf Coast and Mobile. But the resilience of the Gulf Coast that they didn't give up. And I had lots of favorite places. I like the new Capitol. I like the fact that our new Capitol was built for $1 million. I don't think you could pay the parking lot for $1 million anymore. And it's just such a monument of architecture. And to think of all the history that's gone on. I like the Delta. I didn't necessarily. You grew up in the Delta. Where did you grow up?
Cleveland.
Okay, yeah. Cleveland's changed quite a bit, too.
It has.
Yeah. The Delta has changed a good bit since I grew up there back in the 50s and 60s when I was growing up there. The Delta was, Greenville in particular. Greenville was a little Memphis. and Memphis was a little New York. I don't think either are that anymore. It's just, and this is, things change. Everything has to seek its own level, and I think the Delta's still trying to seek its own level. But I didn't appreciate the Delta when I grew up there because it's where I grew up. I didn't know if there was supposed to be anything special about it. Where I went to school, where we went to church. It's where we left to go to Grandma's house in the hills and came back home to run my paper route. But it was after I got out of the Delta, and particularly after I got out of the Delta and started doing stories, that I discovered what a rich cultural history that the Delta has. I had no idea about the blues when I was growing up, mainly because Mama wouldn't let me go in that part of town. It's just that was a rough part of town where the blues was played. Now, to know what came out of Greenville, what came out of Cleveland, what came out of Clarksdale, has shaped the rest of the world, and to have met people like Son Thomas and spent the afternoon at his house and had a good time with him. Met B.B. King, interviewed B.B. King one time, by the way. He gave me another slice of life. I asked him why it was that he gave up his career as a gospel singer and started doing blues. This was when he was doing his free homecomings in Indianola. He'd come back every year and play for free. I had a chance to talk to him one night after he got through. He was sitting down on a chair, and I knew that he had been a gospel singer. Matter of fact, one of the radio stations in Greenville, WGVM, it was a country station. I mean, it was Hank Williams and Kitty Wells and all this during the week. But on Sunday morning, the black gospel singers came and took that station over because it had 5,000 watts. The rest of the stations were just a kilowatt. And they sang on WGVM because it got out everywhere. And I know B.B. King was one of those singers that came there because he went all over the Delta singing with his group. But anyway, so I asked B.B. King, how come you gave up your career as a gospel singer and went into blues? He slapped his knee and said, son, let me tell you. How did you start off? He says, I thought I was a superstar tractor driver because I was working out here, and I forgot the name of the plantation. I was a tractor driver on this such and such plantation making $22.50 a week. He said, but I could come to Indianola on Saturday night with my guitar and stand on the corners singing gospel and singing blues and make $50. He said, now, but when I sang a gospel song, people would pat me on the back. They would shake my hand. They'd tell me, that's great, son. You're going to be great someday. Keep it up. But they wouldn't tip. He said, now I sing a blues song. They give me a little tip. They may take me down, buy me a hamburger, buy me a beer. He looks straight at me and says, any other questions?
Interesting. Okay, let me ask you this question.
Okay.
If you and Ms. Joe get to have a long weekend together and you're going to travel somewhere in Mississippi, where are some of your favorite places to go for a long weekend?
Well, actually, we used to do that. We had a group of us from our high school. Seasons come and go, by the way. If you don't know that yet, you'll understand that. Because seasons come and go. We went through this great season for a while, maybe lasted 10 years. A lot of the kids we went to school with in Greenville moved to Jackson. And a lot of us started getting together. We'd go out and eat maybe once a month or something like that. And once a year, maybe once in 6 months, or we'd go somewhere. Lots of times, we would go to Natchez. And I'd tell you about the last time that we went to Natchez. And so, let me see where I want to start this. I went somewhere. I was going to do a talk one time, got up, started the talk. Said, well, I really don't know where to start. Somebody back at the back said, start toward the end. So let me see if I can start toward the end on this story. We had this promotion that Holiday Vacations did with Channel 3 and then also with Channel 12 when I moved over to WJTV. Their idea is you promote a vacation, tell people you're going wherever it is that you're going, and then you get to go along for free. I mean, they pay your way. You are asked to do some nominal things along the way, like, kind of help out. But the main thing is you go along and you be nice to folks, and you help them where you can. But it's the idea that I'm going there, come along with me. we were going to be on one of those trips. I've forgotten where to now, and we were coming back in late September. Our group wanted to go somewhere in October, and we had decided, well, we're going to go to Natchez. And I didn't want to come home and then the very next Saturday after we got home on a Tuesday, take off and go out of town again. And so I told Joe to put it off. Let's stay home a weekend and then get the next weekend. Make a reservation for that. And so, and this was 6 months out. So we started doing that. She told me one time, one of our friends said that we need to hurry up and make the reservation because they're going fast. I said, well, okay, make the reservation. Didn't think a thing in the world about it. Make the reservation then. So we went to our trip, wherever it was, came home, spent that weekend off, and then went to Natchez the next weekend. And I was going to go pay the bill. You know, we were checking in. I said, well, here, let me go give my credit card and pay the bill. And Joe was awfully insistent. Oh, no, I'll do that. And I said, no, I want to put it on my credit card because, you know, it's a business expense since we're going to be shooting a story down here, and we can write it off. And she was really insistent that she did not want me to go pay that bill because she didn't want me to know how much it was. It ended up, it was balloon weekend, the balloon festival weekend. And I was looking for a $79 rate on a hotel room. I went over, handed the girl behind the counter my credit card, and I was looking as she was filling it out. And we were staying there 2 nights, and she was filling out $600-something. And I looked at it and said, is that $600? And she said, yeah, it's balloon weekend, $300 a night. I said, I think I could buy a house in Natchez for $600. But anyway, we're awfully careful about where we go and what weekend. I still love to go to Natchez, though, and have lots of friends down there that'll let us spend the night in their bed and breakfast for free. So I like friends like that. One of the other places that I like, Tishomingo State Park. I don't think Joe likes it all that much. Have you ever been there, Tishomingo State Park? Okay.
I have not.
It is in Tishomingo County. It's on Bear Creek, and lots of odd things about Tishomingo State Park. First of all, Bear Creek runs north. All of the creeks in Mississippi and rivers in Mississippi flow south. Bear Creek flows north. And the reason it does that is it flows into the Tennessee River and then on up into the Ohio River. Then the other thing about it is Tishomingo State Park has rock outcroppings. Mississippi hardly has rocks anywhere except where somebody's got the county supervisor to gravel their driveway. But this has rock out. As a matter of fact, we were there one time, and an Explorer Scout group from Memphis had come down there to get their rock climbing merit badges. So, I mean, these things are 20, 30 feet tall cliffs on one side of Bear Creek. They have the old CCC cabins, which were built back in the 1930s as a works project. Well, I guess Civilian Conservation Corps did it. Project to give people work during the Depression. These are log cabins. They're very well sealed. They have, thank goodness, heat and air in them now, but they also have a fireplace. I like to go up there in the middle of the wintertime because it's nice and quiet. And you have the place to yourself. You can build a fire in the fireplace and look at sometimes even snow outside the window, things like that. I think maybe it reminds me of my but my grandmother's house up in northeast Mississippi. It wasn't a log cabin by any means, but it's just, that kind of atmosphere. But we were up there one time because we were going to do 3 Mississippi Roads shows in northeast Mississippi. And I was thinking, well, instead of getting a motel room, let's just it's the middle of the week. Shouldn't have had a problem, so let's just get a cabin at Tishomingo State Park. And well, looking back, maybe Joe wasn't enthusiastic about it. Maybe she did say, okay, if we must, or something along that. But anyway, she went along with it. So the first night, it was great. No cell phone, no telephone, just the crickets. Second night, we went out and shot stories the next day, came back in. The next night, no telephone, just crickets. Third night, we came back in, and Joe said, if I hear one more damn cricket. So it's not her favorite place, but I tell people that's where my wife taught me to cuss, right there at Tishomingo State Park.
I love it. I would be like Joe. I'd be like, okay, I'm done with crickets.
Yeah. Well, she was so homesick, I took her to a Walmart so she could kind of feel.
I love it. Tell me about your books. How did you get
Oh,
inspired?
in doing the articles for the electric co-ops, I keep calling it the Electric Power Association, but they changed their changed their names years ago. Of course, that's like ETV. You know, they've been Mississippi Public Broadcasting for eons. But when I went to work there as ETV, so I still call them ETV. But the electric co-ops, the main office in Jackson, has had me writing an article, or allowed me to, in their statewide newspaper for, gee whiz, I hate to even think how long. But somebody came to them one time, asked them if they would like to publish a book about Mississippi barns. And they said, well, Walt is kind of like our freelance writer. If he has time to write a book, we'll write a book. And so I got called in, and they said barns, and I said, well, I'm a sophisticated city kid. I know about new barns, old barns, and I've heard Daddy talk about being taken out behind the barn every once in a while, but that's about all I know. I said, however, because when digital cameras came out, when they started getting pretty good, I bought a digital camera and started taking them with me, taking pictures of places that I was doing television stories about. I said, I've got all these pictures of all these places that I've done these stories about and really don't have anything to do with them. So now I could pull those out and we could write a book about them. And so they said, well, okay, let's give that a shot. And we gave it a shot. My idea was to start in southwest Mississippi, down around Woodville, go up the river to Memphis, across the Tupelo, down to the Gulf Coast, to Pascagoula, and then back up to I made it as far as the Delta in that one book, I think. I just got carried away writing stories. Released it. We called it Looking Around Mississippi with Walt Grayson. And I've forgotten what the print run was. They probably printed 2,000 or something like that. It was sold out in 3 weeks. And so they printed 4,000, and it took a little longer, sold out in about a month. My thinking was, let's go print some more. But they kind of let the dog die on it, and so that went over. But that was, I liked that book. You can still buy them, by the way. Go to Amazon. You'll find some on there every once in a while. Went to Amazon one time. Somebody wanted $1,200 for one of those books. And I asked Joe, I said, do we have any of those left? But you can get them about $10. I actually bought 2 off of Amazon one time for $5 a piece. So, and then the same group, same publishers said, well, we did so well with that one a couple of years ago. Let's do another one. And I still had plenty of pictures left because I didn't get very far that first time. And decided, okay, we'll do volume. I didn't want to call it Looking Around Mississippi Volume 2, so we just called it Looking Around Mississippi with Walt, Looking Around Mississippi some more with Walt Grayson. And by that time, Katrina had hit, so I've got a little section in there about some of the photographs that I did of Katrina. And then they wanted to do another one. They called, that one sold out too, by the way. They did another one. They suggested, why don't you get your readers of your newspaper to send in their favorite photographs of what they think the essence of Mississippi is? And out of all 3 of them, this is probably my favorite book because the people would send in pictures and they'd either send a little caption or maybe a little story along with each picture. And every one of them reminded me of something else that I would have never. It's like, asking somebody to tell me a joke, and I can't think of one, all except a billion of them, Every one that they reminded me of a story that I would have never thought to have put in any other book because it would just never come to my mind without being reminded of it. I would said we should call it, I was told you need to call that Looking Around Mississippi Volume 3. But me, being the book publisher that I am, oh, no, we're going to call this More Homegrown Stories or Mississippi Homegrown Stories with Walt Grayson. We have plenty of those books left, by the way, if anybody wants to buy one. But it's still, though, that is my favorite book because I got to write more of my stories in there. So that's where my book writing came from.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Well, thank you.
So like, if you had to choose, you're such an amazing storyteller. If you had to choose, like, your top 3, what would they be?
Top 3 stories or
Mhm.
topics?
Stories.
Top 3 stories. I'm always interested in ghost stories. I think there are 2 types of people: people who either believe in ghosts or people who are not sure. Because I mean, I'm of the opinion universe is a pretty big place. 95% of it, scientists don't even know what it is. They just know it's got to be there. And to definitely say that something does not exist, I think we're being awfully arrogant to think we have that kind of knowledge. So I like ghost stories. You can't prove them necessarily. I don't think you can. I've been into haunted houses, and I've never seen one, a ghost. Um, but I think that people are intrigued by them. That's one of my favorite things to do is go to haunted house. And Jo won't let me do it. She says, "That's silly. Quit doing those stories." Um, I'll tell you my favorite haunted house story.
Oh, tell me, where is
We
it?
were at the Susie B. Law House. It's an old 2-story house on Lake Washington, up in Washington County, South Washington County. And there was a group of ghost hunters. They were going to do this ghost exploration there. And I wanted to go along with them because I was going to do the story for Mississippi Roads. So we got there early in the afternoon while they were setting up all their cameras and all their monitors and all this other stuff. They run the cameras up here and all over creation. And then they get their little instruments out, the ones that blink and whiz and buzz. You got a ghost over here because this thing turned red or something. And then later that night, after they got everything all set up, and I'm going to have to cough here for a second. Excuse me. It's a 2-story house. Okay, see if I can set it out. The stairs come up here. Then there's this landing, and then kind of a place where you go to the porch to go out on the front porch, and then 2 rooms off on either side. Okay, so I'm standing by the stairs, and you got these group of people over here looking at their little instruments that are blinking all red, green, white, and blue. And then you have, I'm going to have to, is there water here, by the way? I might need one. Here, tell you what, I'll pop a cough drop instead. But anyway, so there's a landing there, 2 rooms off on either side, and the head honcho's over here at the head of the stairs. I'm on this side of the stairs. He's at the banister on the other side of the stairs, and he's over there. Show yourself. Do something. Make a noise. Let us know you're here. I'm standing behind my camera quietly going, that's okay. It's okay. You really don't have to do. You are so kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Good. Now I'm ready to go another half hour. So about the time, though, that he was saying, show yourself, a door slammed. Nobody was in this room, but a door slammed in one of those bedrooms. I discovered the difference between me and professional ghost hunters right then. They went in there. I went back downstairs.
You're like, no.
But I did. I finally got up enough nerve, went in there, and the door to the bathroom was kind of swinging back and forth and back and forth. Now, there are holes in the roof of that building. It was a stormy night, and the wind was blowing, so I know it was the wind that pulled the door closed. But I'm not going to tell my viewers that. So anyway, so the door was swinging back and forth. I got my camera, did the wide shot of it. You could see nobody's touching it, and the door's swinging. And then when I finished up, I turned my camera off, and I told him, okay, I've got everything I need. I'm going. So,
you're like, I'm good on that one.
So,
I have a similar story, King's Tavern in Natchez.
Oh, yeah. Love King's Tavern. Tell me about it. Tell me your story.
I was there, and they were telling me all of the stories about it. And so I was like, okay, well, let's go upstairs. So we go upstairs, and they were like, don't go in the bathroom. Well, I went in the bathroom that was upstairs, and the door locked.
Mom.
And I was like, by itself.
Oh, my.
And I was like, okay, this is not good. And then in that bedroom that's up there where apparently she slept, that was killed there, they were like, just touch the bed. And I was touching the bed. And I was like, yeah, I'm not believing any of this. And
it's warm.
I touched it, and it was hot.
Yeah.
Like hot. And enough that my hand jumped. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And so then it was the strangest thing. Like, as I was like looking underneath, going, is there something under here? And then it cooled off like that.
Hmm.
Like immediately. It was the strangest. There were all kinds of stories. And then when you talked to the people that worked there, they were telling you, like you were talking about that house in Greenville, like early morning stories. And they'd be like, yes. And if you walk by this mirror, when we're closing at night, this is what would happen. But I do remember, I can't remember if it was King's Tavern, but I remember a fire chiefs conference. And of course, the fire chiefs are like, oh, yeah, no big deal. I remember the next morning coming in and they were talking about one of the fire chiefs had stayed at one of those haunted houses and he ended up sleeping in his truck all night
Wow.
because it was such a story to be told. So, yes, I'm always interested in them, but would not want to stay there.
Me and a friend of mine did a series of ghost stories long time ago, back when I first started in television. Um, it was back in the good old days when I did have a photographer that went along with me on some of my stories. Uh, Scott Kelly was his name. Scott's living in Nashville now. I hadn't seen Scott in years, but back in those days, Channel 3 did not run Saturday Night Live live. The thinking was this may be just a little bit too much racy for Jackson, Mississippi that early at night. And so they delayed it a half hour. We did the Saturday night news, and then I think they ran Barney Miller up until 11 o'clock. Then they put on Saturday Night Live. And so Halloween one year was on a Saturday night. And I asked the general manager, that's Dan Modisette, I said, listen, since we're just kind of throwing away that half hour anyway, and I've run across, by that time I'd been doing Look Around Mississippi for a while, I says, how about let me put together a half hour of my ghost stories, and we put the ghost stories in there since it's Halloween. Dan's only question, matter of fact, the only question Dan ever asked me when I asked him about anything was, how much is it going to cost me? And it's not going to cost you a dime. He was all for it then. So me and Scott put together a half hour of ghost stories, ran it that night, got a pretty good reception on it. And we had such fun doing it that we decided, let's do this. Over the course of the next year, let's collect as many ghost stories on the side as we'll have time to do. Right before Halloween next year, we'll combine them into a video, we'll put it on sale, and we'll get rich. So we spent the next year collecting ghost stories, ended up with 13. Put it out on the video, have yet to get rich off of it, but it's there. Now, my daughter, who is working at Mississippi Public Broadcasting and has somehow or another got involved in the programming of the place, scared me this year when she said, Dad, I know what I want to do. To get me a fresh copy of that 1991 video of ghost stories that you did, and we're going to run it on MPB. And I think, I don't know if I want you to do that or not. That would be more scary than the stories, just to see that again. But and our granddaughter, when she was going to Northwest Rankin, and I'd have to go by there and pick her up sometime after school. She was, I think, 4th grade, and she came home, got in the car one day, and she said that in library science that day, and it was around Halloween, she said that their teacher had played my ghost stories tape. And now this was 20 years earlier that I had done that ghost stories. I mean, I was, 30 pounds lighter and had, hair down to here, and it was all salty. I may have still had the mustache. I'm not sure. But anyway, she said, but when you came on the air, she said that she told them, says, oh, that's my pops that did that. And she said, but when you came on, I went, oh, never mind. So it didn't look anything. She didn't recognize me.
Oh,
It was that much earlier. So anyway, maybe it would be a hoot just to see that sometime.
Oh, I think it definitely would be. I think all of that is oh so interesting.
I like to do stories about the culture of Mississippi, where it came from. I do like our blues singers. I like our writers. Growing up in Greenville, we were embedded with writers all of our lives. I think that's one of the first things that I remember any teacher saying anything about is the writers from Mississippi. Matter of fact, we had a high school teacher one time. She got caught up in the spirit one day. I thought she was going to speak tongues before it was over with, talking about the writers in Mississippi. And she told us why you can stand on any street corner in Greenville and pitch a rock, and odds are it would hit the house of a writer. Then she came to herself and realized who she was talking to. She said, but don't really do that.
But on second thought.
Yeah.
Who would be maybe the most interesting person you've interviewed?
Oh, probably Willie Morris. I think Willie's so smart, and he had such an imagination. And I'll be honest with you, Willie could break into a lie, and you'd never know it. He was that good. He told me one time, said he got caught on television in Memphis, I think. And they were interviewing him and a couple of other people about meeting William Faulkner. And he said, I never met the man in my life. But they were asking me about meeting William Faulkner, and he said that he said something and realized, oh, wait a minute. I think I just told them that I had been to his house and sat down and talked to him. And so he said he had to fill a whole half hour about, oh, how wonderful it was to talk to William Faulkner and all the wonderful things that he told him and what he learned and all of that. He says, I was never so glad to get rid of anything in my life. But Willie Morris, I would think I would have loved to have met, I don't know, would have, but I would love to have met Eudora Welty. I did not get to meet her. I think I made the remark, I don't know what we would have talked about if I had. Willie Morris said one time that, his first experience meeting Eudora Welty, he said when he was about 8 years old, Willie lived in Yazoo City, but he had aunts or grandparents or somebody that lived down in the Fontaine area or Belhaven area in Jackson, and he had come see them during the summer. And he said he was at Jitney Jungle number 14. That's the one over on Fortification Street, in the produce section with his aunt. And here is Eudora Welty. And so his aunt knew everybody, and Eudora knew everybody. And so they were visiting back and forth with each other. And of course, she introduced Eudora to young Willie. And he said, as Eudora Welty was walking away, his aunt bent over to him and whispered, she writes those stories her own self. And, of course, it was a Eudora Welty story, The Well-Worn Path, what he said just made him decide he wanted to be a writer.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I met the guy that sold Elvis's first guitar. Elvis did not want a guitar.
This is the Tupelo toy store, isn't it?
The Tupelo hardware. Elvis wanted the .22 rifle. His mother wouldn't let him have it. He pitched a throwdown fit where you lay on your belly and you kick your toes and you beat your fists, thinking that's going to get you what you want. And the guy said he pulled out a guitar and said, here, son, how about a guitar instead? He still didn't want a guitar. He wanted that rifle, but Miss Presley told him it's either the guitar or nothing. And as they were walking out the door, and I have him on tape saying it, it says, Miss Presley said, who knows, son, if you practice and get good, you might get famous.
And look how that ended up.
Yeah. Ended up great. I just like meeting people, though, just regular people. They have such interesting stories. And now that I say that, I can't think of one example right off the top of my head. There's so many of them. People, I did meet a lady, it's just this past summer, as a matter of fact, down in Simpson County. She had a volunteer watermelon vine come up in her front yard. You know what a volunteer is? It just comes up on its own. Nobody planted it. I mean, obviously a seed was there, but nobody planted it. And this lady was, I think she said she was 90 years old. And she said she started, one day she was going to reach down to pull up that watermelon vine. And she told me, I'll see if I can quote her. She says, the Lord told me, don't you touch that vine. And she said, it was just as clear as if you was telling me. She said, so I let it grow. And that thing was 60 feet long. I mean, from one side of the house to the other, and had watermelons all in it. And I took a bite of one of the melons, and it was a sweet watermelon too. But that was her story. Was it? You asked me another question. I'll take another sip of water.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I didn't realize we have been talking for quite a while. So, last question.
Okay.
Let me think of a good one. So you talked about the Greshams giving you words of wisdom. What would be some words of wisdom that you would give to those that are listening today?
Bring cough drops. Words of wisdom. If you want to get into I don't know why people get into broadcasting nowadays. I don't, because it's so different than what it was when I was a kid. I mean, in many ways, broadcasting was brand new, although it had been around for 30 years. So many things were still developing. Television was still developing. For that matter, it still is. I mean, we used to have 3 TV stations in town. I remember when we had 2 TV stations in town. Now we got, then we had 3, and then I think if you have an antenna right now, counting all the sub-channels, you can pick up 30 or so channels on antenna in Jackson, Mississippi. So television is still developing. And then look where we are. We're on a podcast. That's television. It's just a different kind of television. The whole thing is developing. It's been one of the most exciting things to be in, because it started out when AM radio was king, and has grown to this. But I would tell anybody who gets in it that you need to love it, because it's like anything else. There's so much, not bad stuff, but there's so much stuff that you're not going to like that goes on. Same thing as if you were working at a department store, or, if you were fixing flats or anything else. There's a lot of it. It's just work. You need to love it to put up with the work. I tell you what, I would do this. I asked a pastor friend of mine one time about calling, because, all pastors are called. He says, well, I look at calling like this. He says, if God's called you to preach, if you can do anything else, go do it. Because if you can do something else, God didn't call you to this. And I would almost say that about broadcasting. If this is just a job and you've got something else in mind, go to it. Go do that. Because you don't love this enough to do it. But because it's like me, it's not that I couldn't do something else. I just don't want to. I want to do broadcasting. And I want to do it bad enough that I put up with all the stuff that you got to put up with to do it. So get good at what you do, and then just stick with it.
Well, you can definitely see your passion, and just the most amazing storyteller I think I've ever met.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You are just an amazing, amazing life, truly. And I get to introduce you in a few days coming up at another event. So I'll be seeing you soon. But thank you so, so much for coming on today. We appreciate it so much.
Well, you're quite welcome. Oh, at this other event, by the way, when I start telling these same stories over, act like you've never heard them, okay?
Absolutely, no problem.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
You are more than welcome. Thank you for having me.